In 1966, Triang-Hornby introduced the Intercity Express Class 37 based Pullman passenger train set. It represented the state of the art at the time and was much loved by owners, ranged from 6 to 60. At the age of 6, it was my first passenger train and helped fuel my love for the hobby. Now in 2020, I wanted to reproduce an equivalent train set that represented the current state of the art while remaining faithful to the original 1966 set. Let's see what I came up with. Hi, thanks for joining today's review. So the first thing we're going to do is take a look at the 1966 Intercity Express. Then we'll take a look at creating the 2020 version, and we'll do a quick running session of the 2020 version. And then finally we'll do some scoring and comparisons of the two, of the 1966 version and the 2020 version. Okay, let's get into the next section. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is take a look at the 1966 Intercity Express. It had the number of RS.9, which is kind of an unusual part number for Hornby at the time. It was a Class 37 locomotive, and it was in the British Rail green livery. This was a three-pole locomotive, and my memories of this locomotive was probably a pretty indifferent running performance. It wasn't exactly the greatest performing locomotive, and which is probably not surprising. It had the little carbon brushes on it, which used to wear out. It was fine around the simple oval of track, but once you started adding points or anything like that to your layout, you started to get the kind of poor sort of running performance you get from a three-pole locomotive. But at the time, this was pretty standard, and it was as good as what was out there for 1966. The three cars that came in the pack, these were Pullman cars. You got a brake and two coaches, and they were pretty nice. They came with plastic wheels and the white top roofs, and they were, again, pretty good coaches for their time. I can't really complain about them, and I was always pleased with them. We got an oval of radius 1 track in there, and you got this automatic uncoupler, which is kind of an interesting thing to include in the set. It didn't really add an awful lot, but it was one of the features of the set at the time. And then probably one of the most unusual additions in the set was a little bottle of Shell lubricating oil that you got. Probably a bad sign when you get this in a box with a locomotive like this. It's a kind of an indicator that you're going to need to use it. And it has a little Shell symbol on the front of the bottle. So very interesting little add-on to get with the set. I don't think I've ever seen a train set with a bottle of oil, lubricating oil, included in it since this time. The overall selling price, when you actually convert it to today's numbers, sits between £90 to £100, which is probably not too bad, and we'll talk about the relative prices later on. But in its day, this was a pretty expensive set. I mean, it was top of the range from Hornby at the time, and would have been one of the more expensive sets out there. So interesting, that sort of price, and maybe we'll keep that in mind when we look at the comparisons later on between this and the newer version, which does get quite interesting. So this is it. It's a pretty standard set today and pretty basic in terms of functionality, but in those days this was a top set, and I was very pleased with it. So here is actually what remains of the set that I had. It went through a very hard life and was well used. I resurrected this from the attic a couple of years ago. I still had kept the different pieces. One of the coaches unfortunately didn't last it this long. I think somebody stood on it at one stage. But the other coaches are pretty well intact, as you see them there. The locomotive is no longer functional and has been stripped for parts. You can see that most of the buffers are gone, and it really isn't any more functional. So again, it did have a pretty hard life and was well used. You can purchase these today, and you can get running versions of these sets today, and you can pick them up on eBay between 50, 60, 70 pounds for ones in pretty good condition. So this is not representative of what, if you go out there trying to look for one of these, this isn't representative of what you might find. So this is my memory of this set, and there's still two running coaches and a locomotive, which is probably, as I say, just being stripped for parts at this stage. And I should probably add some weathering to it and put it on a siding somewhere, just kind of decaying away. I did have positive memories of this set, as I said. My memories of the locomotive was that it was never the greatest runner, and kind of reflect that when I look back at this and look at the scoring. But it was a very nice set in its day, and very, very pleased to have owned it. So now we get into the process of recreating this set in 2020. So here are the kind of requirements I set out for myself. I wanted to get a Class 37 loco that was representative in terms of livery and configuration as the original Class 37. Wanted with DCC sound and directional cab lighting, also looking to get spring buffers on there. So looking for a fully featured locomotive that would still be representative of the original 1966 version in the set. Also looking to get Pullman coaches equivalent to the ones that are there. Looking for all the fully features that you'd expect on Pullman coaches, spring buffers, coach lighting, good detailing, and I wanted to have a rake of up to full 6 coaches here to make it representative of a full real train. So at the end of the day, the bottom line was that it should be representative of the 1966 set, and in the main that was going to come down to the locomotive when we get into it. So I have looked around for different options for the locomotive, and I've put up 2 options I had looked at here. This is the Bachmann 32791DS, which I actually have, and I'll do a review of that separately. However, I did not feel this was representative. It did have the split head codes. The actual shade of green is not in line with the original model, and so while it's a very good locomotive, and I say I'm going to do a separate review of this locomotive, it was not the one I chose for representing the 1966 set. Also looked at the 32375Z. The actual colour matching was better here, but again it's not representative, and it was lacking head codes. The head codes are gone from it, and this was a locomotive serving the Highland region. And again, I didn't feel this was representative of enough of the original. So these are both Bachmanns, and unfortunately I was not really able to look at any Hornby alternative for a 2020 version of this locomotive. So in the end, through my scouring of eBay, I did track down this guy. It came with DCC sound, and as you see there, the livery is actually representative of what we have. It does have the same head codes. It is a weathered locomotive, but a very nice weathering effect on it. It is the Bachmann 32782A, which came as a DCC ready, but this version actually had a DCC sound installed, Olivia's sound installed in the locomotive. So very pleased to pick this up, and this is a very representative model, I believe, of the original, and with all of the added features I was looking for, and with some weathering as well, which is all the better. So quite pleased to have this now included as the locomotive and select this as locomotive for the particular set. And certainly I'd be interested in people's feedback on this if you also have this locomotive yourself. A great runner, unlike its 1966 counterpart, a really good performer and really looks the part. So this was the locomotive I was going to go forward with for this set. Next up I had to look at the Pullman cars. Now I had both white topped and grey top Pullman cars from Hornby. The super detailed versions with the lighting, I've had those for a number of years now. I offloaded the white top coaches a couple of years ago, and I really wanted to obviously manage the costs in this project, so I said I would reuse those and make one addition to them, which was the Hornby R4904, the Pullman car, the bar car, the New Century bar, which is from the latest Hornby range. It's in the current catalogue. So that was the only addition I needed to make. I had previously added a brake car, the R4166, because I was missing a brake from the original 4 coaches I had. So I picked this up on eBay at a reasonable price, and it 100% fits in with the other coaches. It is an older, slightly older vintage, but it has all the same features as the other coaches. So these coaches all fully match. They've all got the features of the spring buffers, the lighting, and the super detail. I'm going to do a separate review actually on these, so I'm just going to flick through them here, but they do warrant a review of their own. They are excellent coaches, top of the range. While they're not 100% representative of the original set, I do believe they're fitting for a 2020 version that is fully featured. So this is what I went with. One of the other ones, actually interesting coaches that's in there, is the 12-wheel Pullman third class parlour car, and that's again a little bit of a rarity, and nice to have that as part of the rake. I do have 2 of the R4483 in the set, so I would like to replace one of those, maybe just do a swap out. So right now I do have 2 of those. Unfortunately I would like to get a replacement, but this was giving me the 6 car rake that I needed, at least to get a representative set. So these were it. I'm not going to look at getting the uncoupler or the bottle of oil for the 2020 version, unfortunately. I won't be representing those. And in making up the rest of the 2020 configuration, I would position it as a radius 3 curves in the set, an oval with radius 3 in there, and with DCC configured in the set. And I'd use the Hornby DCC configuration for this. So I'll include that in the compilation of the full set at the end. So when we do the pricing, I'll include all of those in the pricing. So that's it. That's the makeup of the 2020 version. And the next thing we're going to need to do is actually see this in action and see how this set actually looks and performs. And then we can do a comparison back to the 1966 version, and also do a pricing comparison, which would be quite interesting as well. Okay, let's move on to the running session. Okay, now we're going to start the running session, and I've had to turn down the volume quite a bit for the actual locomotive here, because the sound is very loud. The Olivia's DCC sound, it's excellent, but it is loud. So I've turned that down quite a bit. I do have a separate running session video without any commentary, with the full sound at full volume. So please check that out. That goes through all the different speeds as well. It's a longer video of just the running session. So if you want to take a look at that separately if you're interested in it. So we're going to get underway here with the train as we have it, and you can see the lighting there. And you can see the effect, a nice weathering effect on the actual windows as well. It does a very good job. And I think the sound, as I said, is really excellent. The other thing that's excellent is the performance of this particular locomotive. It's really good at a low speed crawl, but can pick up the pace pretty good as well. The performance of these coaches, so we've got the 6-coach rake here of all 6 Pullman coaches. These are actually really good performing coaches as well. They sit very well on the track. They have nice metal wheels, and as well as looking good, they actually perform very well. I would actually go as far as saying that they perform better as a model than the real life coaches, which would have speed limits on them in terms of their build capability. So just going through there at low speed, and we'll pick this up in a minute. And here we go into the next, just speeding up the next level of speed, as you get a good look at all the coaches here going past. And I think they really do look good. As I say, I am going to do a separate video on these coaches, because they do warrant a closer look to see them. And again, a very nice looking view there, the locomotive going past. So as I said, the performance of this locomotive is really good over both DC and DCC. Doesn't suffer from any of the kind of issues that the original locomotive, 3-pole locomotive, suffered from in the original set. Its performance really is way better. It's in another class, and I suppose the motor in this is well advanced from the motor we had on the original set, and it really shows. So this was a joy to run this set. It really was. Really good looking, great locomotive, delivering really good sound. So very enjoyable running session, and not a glitch to be seen anywhere in terms of the performance. And I think really that's in keeping with the components that are making up this particular train, all doing their bit to make it look and run like a really good model. And I don't go up to a very high speed here. I try to keep this pretty prototypical, because these guys wouldn't have gone more than about 60-70 miles per hour in reality, because say the coaches wouldn't be up to it. But these coaches are actually, so you could run your model a lot faster than the real train. So I'm just going to bring it into a close now. We'll come through the tunnel here. We'll slow her down, and again, just to give you the idea of the smoothness. Some really smooth running performance. This is a 6-car rake, which is a reasonable rake to be pulling. Could pull an awful lot more, but really smooth run in at the very end here, and some great sound as well. Again, I've had to turn it down an awful lot, because it really gets loud at this point. So I have turned this down significantly, and you'll really have to check out the other video to hear what this sounds like in reality. The Olivia sound in this is really good. So I'm just going to bring it to a halt, but overall an impeccable running session, probably one of the best locomotives I've actually have running in overall performance, and a really good rake of Pullman coaches. Okay, it's time to get into the ratings section of the review. So I've done a set of ratings here for the RS.9, which is the 1966 Intercity Express, and I've done a rating in 1966, a rating that would be, say, the rating this would have got if you were to review it in 1966. And I've also done a rating for 2020, so this is how you would rate this in 2020. And it is kind of interesting, and some of that's based on the actual pricing situation. This would have been a pretty good set in 1966, so the scoring is pretty good in terms of running performance and appearance and detail. No sound, of course. The extras, the bottle of oil and the auto uncoupler. Price would have been a little bit on the medium to higher side, so this wasn't a cheap set in that time. So 3 stars there, and an overall 4 stars. So a good scoring set in that time frame, but more in the upper middle segment of the market, I guess. And I have this kind of summary there, nice looking and reasonable performing set in that bracket. In 2020, however, it doesn't fare up so good, and the appearance really isn't as good. The level of detail compared to rolling stock and locomotives today would be in the railroad category, I guess. Running performance poor again in the railroad category, particularly the railroad diesels, which have never been good. It's unfortunate there. But however, the pricing it would be a very good value set, because the 90 to £100 equivalent today, you're going to struggle to get a 3-car passenger set like this with a Class 37 with track, etc., and power controller. You're going to struggle to get that for anything under £100 or even anything close to that. So value-wise, is actually would be better value today, this set, based on the price inflation. And I think that's kind of an indicator of the way, I suppose, model railway costs have gone up. They've certainly exceeded inflation in terms of the increase in cost, and we'll really see that when we look at the 2020 version of this. So really for 2020, this becomes a kind of a low-cost basic set in the railroad range in terms of its capability, which is kind of a bit sad when I look back on this set and how much I thought it was a really great set in its day, and now it's kind of classified as a kind of a railroad type set, maybe as a little bit of a downer, but that's kind of reflecting reality and the capability of the set and how things have improved, of course. So next we've got to take a look at the 2020 set, and the first thing I wanted to do was cost this out. So I've put in some of the costings here to get a view as to what this would cost as an actual set. So I've put in 220 as a recommended retail price for the Bachmann with the sound. Now you wouldn't get Olivia's sound for that price. You'd get the typical Bachmann Class 37 factory fitted sound. So the sound wouldn't be quite as good, but still be very very more than passable. For the Pullman coaches, these all come in at different prices. So I put an average here of £45 each. Which probably reflects the kind of cost when if you look at the new Belmont Pullman set, which is kind of an equivalent. That's coming in at £299, and so the coaches were probably making up about £120, £130 worth of that, and they're equivalent coaches to the coaches I have here in terms of lighting and detail. So that kind of just gives you an idea. So I'm kind of using a similar costing here for the coaches at 45. But for 6 coaches, obviously that adds up and brings you up to £270 for the 6 coaches. So in reality, people may just pull that back to 3 or 4 coaches. The E-Link controller is 85. The track, oval track, 25. Which brings you up to a total component cost in RRP terms of about £600. Reality is they could sell it for obviously a lot less than that, and I've put it here as maybe a potential catalogue price of $49.99, which actually wouldn't be too bad, I think, in terms of overall value for the kind of capability we're talking about. So that's the price I'm going to use for the overall scoring assessment for this. We'll use the $49.99 price. So what does the scoring actually look like? So running performance is top notch, and I'm giving this a 5-star. The locomotive is really, really good. It's better than a lot of other Class 37 the Bachmann locomotives. And now some of that may be down to the controller we used as well. So really good performance. The detail and the weathering, again, really, really good. And when you look at the coach detail, And I say I haven't really gone into that in this particular review, and I would cover that in a separate review. The Pullman coaches are superb in terms of their detail. Giving a 5-star. The sound I've given 4.5, and you could argue that's nearly a 5-star for the Olivia sound, but maybe 4.5 if you kind of average versus a factory fitted sound. Extras, lots of detail, lots of lighting in the set. So giving 4-star on that. And then the overall price value, I'm putting it at 3-star, and you could debate whether that's 3 to 4 stars, but obviously $4.99 is a really high price set, and but you're getting a lot for that. So there's a bit of a trade-off there, and I think I would be interested if you could get this, if you could pick up this set for $4.99, would you go for it? For example, that's the ultimate question. And I certainly think if with sound included, full DCC sound and 6 coaches of this quality, I think that's not a really bad price. So overall, I'm giving a 4.5 star. So this is a top scoring set. It's even scoring higher than the original set would have done in its day, but at a real price. So if you think of it, we've gone from something in the £90 to £100 range to something in the £500 range in terms of the cost. There's been a lot of technological advances in those days, a lot of manufacturing advances, and it kind of tells you again that model railways have become more expensive, and there's been a lot of inflation in terms of model railway costs over the years, and I think that's very reflective here. In other areas, if you consider mobile phones or computers, something that you would have paid for £100 in 1966, for the same price today, you'd expect to be getting way more capability for the same price, not for something 5 times more. So there's no doubt that model railway enthusiasts are paying a premium for what they're getting today, and I think that is a little bit of an issue. Okay, so that's it. That's the end of this session and this feature. It was an interesting experience for me. It was very enjoyable recreating the 1966 set. I'm far happier with the 2020 version of it, I have to say. I think it looks better, performs better, it costs an awful lot more. I am much happier with the new set, and I think it is really good. It shows the progression of the model railway scene in that time and the capabilities that we now have in our models. Pricing, though, we are paying a premium for it, and I think that is a little bit of an issue. Okay, so what do you think of the 2020, or if you did own the 1966 Intercity Express, how did you think about it at the time, and do you still feel the same way about it after this review? Interested in your feedback, and if you had any other kind of suggestions, maybe on the locomotive that I chose, or were there other alternatives you might have chosen instead that might have been perhaps better, please let me know. Okay, thanks for joining today's review. I hope it was interesting, and we'll see you on the next one, and in the meantime, happy modelling.